Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Happy May. Happy May. All right. Hmm. Okay, we are live. Ooh, I should hit the record button. That might be good. Let's do it. Ah, there we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rise and Shine with Morning Moon. My name is Coach Lacy, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you have not visited the Rise and Shine with Morning Moon Facebook group, do so and check in with your daily foundations wellness checklist. You can find that in the pinned post in the group Rise and Shine with Morning Moon on Facebook. You can also download the Rise and Shine Release Foundations Guide, which has the checklist and the Circle of Life seasonal check-in, which is a great time today as it's May 1st to do so. So go over to my website, www.lacyjwatson.com and download the Release Foundations Guide so you can do your seasonal check-in with the Circle of Life. Hi, today it is May. It's May. It's here. Can you believe it? This year is flying by. I can't. I can't even. The seasons are shifting. Again, we just got into spring. It feels like we just stepped into spring, and here we are shifting again. And feels like if there's one thing that is guaranteed in life, and that is time just keeps on a ticking. And while it just keeps ticking, it doesn't always ask us if we're ready. If we're ready for that. Sometimes it just changes. And sometimes it happens very gently. We might be ready for that change. But other times, my goodness, it's like a freight train on the road to Hades. Man, oh, I don't know. I have just been reflecting today on how fast time goes. And this idea that time just goes and goes and we're not fully consciously aware of what we're doing in the moment. And that things just go on and on. We just need to be more conscious and aware and take a moment, take a deep breath, and fully step into what it is we want to do with this one crazy life and what our calling on our life is, following this divine design. And knowing that the idea that just because we had a season in life where things were working or they weren't working, whether it was a job or a relationship or a version of yourself or um, whatever, doesn't mean that that season is meant to last forever. There are seasons in life where we are called to release it. We're called to evolve past it, or we're called to pivot. And that can be really hard. Life is really hard. It's really difficult where when you are faced with a sudden change and having to let something go and embrace a new season in your life. I mean, it's right now, it's May. It was just April. It was just April. Those of you who love winter sports, it's now May. You're done. No more winter sports for you. You need to pivot into summer sports now. And that's a sudden change, and it can be jarring. I know how hard it can be. I have had seasons in my life where I was clinging, I was clinging to who I thought I was because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Because I'd put in so much time and effort and energy, because I thought that staying meant loyalty. But what I have learned over and over again in my career, especially, if my career has taught me anything, it is that God doesn't waste time, but your obedience is not also wasted when it's time to move forward. Do not, it is not, it is okay to move forward. It is okay to let go. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself, the most faithful thing you can do to move forward on your life's purpose is to let go. Letting go of the role that you played, letting go of what that people, places, or things needed you to be, letting go of what once gave you that identity and that purpose or belonging. And that's really, really not easy. And as someone who had my identity wrapped up in my career, letting go of a almost 2 decades long career, I worked in naturopathic medicine from 2008 to 2023 or 24 and 24. And to walk away from that identity was really difficult to step into something new. And while I've kept a thread of who I once was with me, and I've taken the lessons I've learned once with me, I've had to let go of that identity and that purpose and that belonging. And I've had opportunities come to me where I've been presented with what my former self would have been just absolutely thrilled and dove headfirst into. And the me now, who has a different role to play, sees things differently, and I don't dive headfirst anymore. So it's okay. It's not easy to do. Even in this past month, I've had to major transitions in our life. Things are shifting, seasons have ended, relationships have shifted, chapters that we thought would last a long time closed very quietly without warning. They were loud, but it was also quiet without warning, and it's humbling. It's humbling. I've had times in my life, big transitions where people I love dearly walk away who were once super close to me that I talk to every day. I've had seasons, end in my life that I never thought would end, like living in Wyoming is a huge example. I, as a young person, I left Wyoming when I was 20 years old. I never, back then you think that you know everything, and you think the world, you've already done so much, and I never imagined that I would be sitting 20, let's see, I've been in Washington now for 19 years. I never thought I would be at the equal. I never thought I would leave that and that season would end, right? And here I am, and I've learned so much, and there's so much. It's humbling, you know, and I've had moments where God has tugged at my heartstrings, like when I left my career in naturopathic medicine. God was telling me that my purpose was no longer in the clinic, that I was needed in my own business, and that I needed to build my own thing. And that was humbling. If you're anything like me, you've probably built your life on consistency. Sure, I've had my wild days, and it's no secret that I've been a party animal and I enjoy the good party, but I like consistency. I like familiarity. I like responsibility, you know, um, and maybe you're like me, and your identity was even tied to a certain rhythm or a role, or keeping that rhythm, like being a parent, you know. And what I want you to remember, especially to the people that have given and given and given until there's nothing left. I'm looking at you, moms. I'm looking at you, moms. All of us moms, and dads too. But really, I mean, there's something about being a mom, even if you're a stepmom. It's not just a stepmom. I'm a stepmom. I'm looking at you, moms. whether you're, a biological mother, or you are, a mother figure, and you have people under mentors, even, you know, those of you who have people under you that you're helping mentor. Hey, and even those of you who don't. It's not all about us. It's not all about you. It's not all about you. And I want us to, me, you, for me, for you, for us, all of us need to remember. And it's a very humbling thing to remember that life, everything we do while there is a calling on our life and there's a divine design, it's not all about us. It's not all about you and your dreams. It's not all about what you want. And seasons will change, and so will you, and so will your title, and so will your role, and so will too your struggles. And that means you are not your struggles. You are not your title. You are not your role. Everything changes, but at the essence of everything that you are, what you really, really are, is you are a child of God, and you have a calling on your life. There's a divine design, and God is always leading you forward, even when it feels like you're being pulled apart, even when you're learning a really, really difficult lesson, and you don't, quite know how to move forward, or, just release it, give it to God, and trust that your the calling on your life, and the design that is meant for you, and the choices that you make will lead you to the place that you're supposed to be. And notice what feels like it's shifting. What's shifting in your life? And what are you outgrowing? And what are you still holding on to? And what are you resisting because you're afraid of what comes next? I'm there. I've been watching, my own life transition. My husband and I have been sitting through a transition right now. Our daughter is graduating. His daughter is graduating soon. She's become an adult. She's 18 years old. She's it's her life is now. And for years, every plan, every vacation, every budget, every calendar, everything we structured around everything around parenting, everything around her needs. Even when she wasn't living with us full time, we still centered everything around being there for her from the time she was 5 years old until now. And now it's shifting, and we are entering a new season when we are allowed to finally put us first, which is almost unthinkable. It's almost unthinkable, to travel when and wherever we want, to go on weekends together just because, you know to go and, kind of reconnect again. Because as parents, we get disconnected a bit. Like there's always that connection, and we have the house and everything's running, but as parents, we have to find each other and ourselves again, because we pour so much into our children, especially in these last 3 years. It's just, those of you who are teenager parents and young adult parents know the transition is real, and the choice, you go from making all the choices for the children and helping them find their way, feeding them everything, every piece of food that goes into their mouth, every piece of clothing they wear, every place that they go, every friend that they have is your choice. Like at the end of the day, it's the parents' like choice when they're very little, and as they grow, we relinquish some of those choices, and we give them to the child, and the child grows and grows, and then one day when they're ready, and they become an adult, and then they make their choices. And it's a wild thing to step back and recognize your role in that, and just knowing that you just You grieve the summers, you grieve the trips, and you grieve the change, but you embrace what's coming because there's so much more coming. In the past month, I have grieved the family that I always thought I'd had, you know. We thought longer, right? We thought that it would be longer. It went by fast. It went by so fast. And it's not that it's gone, we'll have grandchildren and all those things, but I've never even had my own child. And so that's crazy to think that now my stepdaughter, who I've been with since she's 5, is now an adult and looking, at her life. And she's an adult and she will have children of her own, and I will be a grandmother at some point. And I've never even had my own biological, and um that's a lot to sit with. And so, it's a moment. And so, and also besides all that, there's moments of grief where we grieve moments in our life where friendships that we've loved and lost and faded away, people, nothing bad. You just don't connect with people, or you grieve with people, parts of yourself you no longer need, but you still miss, those things you used to do. I used to make a lot of like herbal remedies and things like that. Now I'm making freshies, like there's moments, but in those moments, I've also found that there's been freedom and glory and fresh air and letting go what's come and gone. It never doesn't mean that it's lost, but it means that we're just moving forward in the story and getting into alignment with God's next assignment and his next gift and his next grace. And if you're living in tune with spirit and you are following your calling and the divine design and the calling on your life, then all you need is the faith of a mustard seed, and to look at the glimmers like we talked about yesterday. We talked about the glimmers and the nothing, when on the never ending story, how the nothing sweeps past you and you have to just hold on to the glimmers. And when change happens and when seasons change, you just hold on to those memories and those, grieving the change of, of our kid into adulthood. It's, mm. And parents know. So it's not bad. There's nothing bad. It's just life. And it doesn't mean that there's failure, and it doesn't mean that you've given up. It's just time. And it's not your enemy. Time is not your enemy. We only have this one little life here um on earth for, give or take 70 to 100 years if we are lucky. And that's not very long. I'm, 40 years old. I'm halfway there, and it's gone by really fast. And so we are allowed to evolve. We are allowed to be renewed. We are allowed to want something different than what we did 10 years ago. I look at people that I know that are still exactly the same as they were 10 years ago and doing the exact same stuff. And it's wild to me of could you how could you remain the same when there's so much more to hold and so much more to be and know and grow, and learn and just serve a purpose. There's a time and a season for everything. There's a time to build, there's a time to tear down, and there's a time to hold close, and there's a time to release. And they both serve a purpose. They both serve a sacred purpose. I think that's in even Philippians in the Bible. There's a time for everything. There's seasons for everything. And today it's May. And today, let us choose this new season, and May and summer is coming, and it's going to be a sacred and holy endeavor. And we're going to anchor in with our wellness foundations, and we're going to try and get through all of them this summer because it's going to be beautiful, and we're going to live our lives to the fullest. And even if we can't and we're not there yet, we're going to choose to trust. And we're going to choose to trust that if something is ending, that it means that something bigger and more beautiful is coming, and leaning into the discomfort. And I hope that you will find peace in the uncertainty, because that is certain, as that time will continue to move on. You will continue to have choices to make, and there's always going to be uncertainty, and you will always be uncomfortable. And as long as you're uncomfortable, that means that you're alive. So lean into that and let your May be the month of what may be. Embrace what may happen and step into this month with glory and grace. So let's rise and shine, and I'll see you tomorrow. And I hope you have the most beautiful